A few years ago, Saskatchewan had a sterling reputation in the film industry for having some of the most professional, hardest working people. People for whom no job was too small and egos were in short supply. And that fact attracted filmmakers to Saskatchewan, and it fostered a local industry capable of producing bankable hits. You know, some shows you might have heard of like Corner Gas or Little Mosque on the Prairie, but also other movies and documentaries, and bigger pieces, nuanced pieces. They were built by people who are deeply talented, and it was all happening right here. After the film tax credit was axed, about 7 years ago, which was the film equivalent of taking Old Yeller out to the woodshed and saying the final goodbye, is frustrating, right? According to the Leader Post, the Saskatchewan Chamber of Commerce report suggested that over the 14-year life of the tax credit, the province invested approximately $108 million and saw a return of $623 million. That sounds like a smart investment. Get $6 back for every dollar in, that's not bad. That left a lot of people scratching their heads when that decision to cut it was made. And it's a decision that arguably still haunts Saskatchewan today. The cut to the tax credit has also left local filmmakers looking for other opportunities, like teaching and freelancing on smaller films. And that's what my guest today has done. His name is Layton Burton. He's someone whose name has kept popping up at the edges of my consciousness over the years through friends and coworkers from his work in film and as a documentarian. And then when I found out he got hired at my alma mater, the University of Regina's journalism school, a good friend of mine who works in film said to me, "That's a major coup for the journalism school. I bet the film department is super jealous." He's outspoken, he's an advocate for young filmmakers and journalists, and he's fighting the good fight for local film industry, and I can't wait to ask him all about it. Layton, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Was it an accurate introduction?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm still scratching my head, and I have been for 7 years. It's a wonder that I can still grow hair there. It's something I've never forgotten, and I truly do think about it every single day I wake up. Why?
Did I miss any parts of your resume? Was there something else that somebody might know you better for?
Well, I think the Sask Party would say they know me as the incessant whiner. But no, I think it's pretty accurate. You know, if there's one thing that did happen because of that cut, it is that I found a passion for working with young people and young filmmakers, and whether they be documentarians or narrative filmmakers. It is truly my passion now, because at 57, even if the tax credit came back, I mean, it would be 4 to 5 years before we would be back to where we were when it all ended. And at that point, we were the busiest film jurisdiction per capita in Canada. And I hope that happens again someday, because I think that the young filmmakers in this province, and there are many still, they would love to see that happen again, and they deserve to see that happen again, because they deserve to be on those kinds of sets.
Before we get too deep into films,
Yes.
I have so many more follow-up questions. Let's drink some beer.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you. I can't wait.
Cheers.
Cheers, chin chin. As my 95-year-old Scottish aunt would say, "Long may your lum reek," which I think means long may your chimney have smoke. So in other words, heat.
I would say to her, "Slancha."
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's nice. Oh, that's very rich. That's full of body. And I don't have all the right terminology for beer drinking. I just know that I really enjoy it. So this is nice.
I'm going to be honest, I haven't tasted this one yet. This is my very first taste of this beer.
Right.
It's our Coconut Cream Stout. We just launched it.
Yeah, it's lovely. I can tell you right now I'd buy some.
Super velvety.
Mm-hmm.
Really soft in the mouth.
And not a, there's no bitter aftertaste whatsoever.
I would say it actually kind of finishes like a dark fruit, like a plum.
And the coconut's not too strong either.
No. but that velvety, that creaminess,
Yeah,
definitely comes from the coconut.
it's definitely creamy for sure.
Oh, Dave crushed it.
Love it. Love it. Well done, Dave. I don't know you, but well done.
Brewmaster Dave.
Brewmaster Dave.
According to the notes, it's a 6.5% ABV, and Dave describes it as a decadent stout, rich with flavors of toasted coconut, milk chocolate, and a hint of espresso.
Oh, 3 of my favorite things.
Pick those things out.
Yeah.
And then Dave also recommends you pair it with a slice of cheesecake or a chocolate fudge brownie.
Oh, I'll take the fudge brownie. Yeah, not a cheesecake fan, but I'll take the fudge brownie for sure. That's great.
This is a real, kind of a perfect Christmas treat. I could drink this by the fire, roast some chestnuts, tell the kids to be quiet.
Yeah. My kids don't live at our house any longer, so we're empty nesters, so it's always kind of quiet. I love that.
It means you don't have to share.
Exactly. Exactly, Matt. Thank you.
So let's get back into the film discussion.
Okay.
Kind of left me hanging.
Yeah.
What the heck happened?
It's been since the spring of 2012, but it really started in 2007 when the Wall government was first elected, and they froze the tax credit. In doing so, they pretty much advertised or broadcast to the world that they weren't committed to film wholly. And as soon as, like any investor, if you see trouble on the horizon, you're not going to put your money there. So in 2007, when they froze it, our industry started to show some decline. But again, because of that reason. When they actually made the cut in 2012 of the spring, it was an absolute kick to the gut for 1,500 to 2,000 people, full-time people that worked in film. And we all
working locally, paying
taxes, buying homes, buying groceries, buying clothing, putting their kids through school, the whole 9 yards. And to this day, of those 1,500 to 2,000 people that we had moving through the film ranks, there are only about full-time people, less than 10 that are full-time film people. And I exclude people that have started their own broadcast or their own production companies and do whatever they need to do to survive.
So from 2,000 to 10.
To 10.
That's
less than 10.
That's pretty devastating.
That's pretty devastating, yeah. And we still don't know why. We have never been told why. I mean, there was lots of vilification by the Sask Party about our industry, about being shell companies, and about not paying taxes, and about buying expensive motorcycles, and just ridiculous things that made absolutely no sense. But as an industry, we knew how good we were. We went through 3 forensic audits. All of them were initiated by the Sask Party themselves, and all 3 we passed. And that's why you never see them, because they're in a desk drawer somewhere, hidden away, because they don't want people to know, and they're not interested in telling people either. So,
are they inconvenient?
Yeah, I would say they're inconvenient to their narrative about film, about the race to the bottom. And I think, wow, a race to the bottom, if that's what you're worried about. There are a lot of potash mines and gold mines and whatevers that you're digging down into that are eventually going to be empty. But we're renewable. We're ideas. We're stories. We're Saskatchewan stories. And I think that's what really broke my heart, was that we were no longer going to tell Saskatchewan stories like Corner Gas, like Little Mosque on the Prairie, like RenegadePress.com. We never hid the fact that we were from Saskatchewan, and we never hid the fact that it was a prairie story or a prairie a narrative that they were talking about. So
you're not sneaking a New York skyline into Saskatchewan.
I know of no special effects or any post effects where they were trying to make Regina look different. Regina was Regina, and we were proud of it. And Saskatoon the same, and Moose Jaw, and Rollo, Saskatchewan, and Lumsden, Saskatchewan. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Indian Head for Little Mosque on the Prairie.
You said you think young people deserve to have a thriving film industry. Where does that come from?
Well, I believe that because we have a socio-political climate in this province that wants to build young people in mining and forestry and fishery, in construction. I mean, you name it, right? They those young people who are filmmakers and want to learn about film and make film here, they deserve to have that opportunity just like anybody else. Whether they're wielding a hammer on a film set or wielding it on a new downtown hotel, right? It's the same thing. It's an industry. It's not a pastime. It's not a shell company. It's not something that comes and goes and leaves us empty. It builds people and it builds careers.
The trades play a big role in film production, don't they?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we have painters and construction workers and who design and build sets and paint sets, and we have electricians. We have riggers who come on set and rig cameras and rig camera people. What I loved about film and still do to this day is the collaboration of so many different trades and craft people. That's what made it joyful, and that's what made us a family. And you hear that a lot, perhaps about film, that they're always talking about family and friends. Well, we really were. We spent 14, 15, 16 hours a day together, sometimes 6 days a week for months on end. It's tough not to become family. That was part of the joy of it, and I think that's an aspect of what I miss the most, is the creation of something from an idea, and the production of that idea with my friends and my family. Yeah.
How do we get to a good place? What do we have to do to foster growth, to rebuild what was lost?
Well, that's an easy question to answer. We need to follow the rules of the film industry worldwide, and we need a business package that will allow us to compete with the rest of the world. Simply said, the Saskatchewan Film Employment Tax Credit. We need that back. The rest of the world works on tax credits. You can call it whatever you like, a tax credit, a grant, whatever. I don't care what the terminology is, but we need that to foster investment in film in this province. Just like we need tax incentives or tax grants or whatever the politicians want to call it for any industry. There are tax credits for every industry in this province, from mining to forestry to fisheries. You cannot compete globally without that kind of business relationship with government, and that's not to say that it's a bad thing. Some people say there's too much government in business, but until I can't change that. But what I can do is I can make a business case for film, just like you can make a business case for mining or farming or anything like that. They're all deserving of it.
What do you say to people who think film is a waste of time? The arts and theater, that kind of stuff, just a waste of money.
Well, you're never going to convince everyone. There are always going to be those people that naysay about the arts. And I say this: when you go home at night after a long day's work, whether you be on a construction site or in a mine or at an oil field, you don't go home and dream about digging another hole or pulling more oil out of the ground. You go home and you watch a movie. You go home and you put a CD in your CD player. You are entertained and relaxed by the arts. And every great society that I read about, learned about in school, every great society had a burgeoning artistic bent to their industry. That's what we do. We, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, the arts make us whole. The arts make us human. The arts allow us to tell people what we're thinking, what we're looking at. Whether you're painting on canvas, or whether you're a photographer behind the lens of a camera, or you're a dancer or a musician. I mean, you do it because, firstly, you're born to do it, I think. It's just innate when you come into the world. But you do it because it makes you whole. We are not just about money and business and and social standing and economic standing. We have to be about the arts and about giving back and about having a soul. And I think the arts, and I'm not just talking about film, I'm talking about all of the arts, the creative industries. It gives us, as humans, it gives us soul. And without soul, what are we? We are empty shells that, march to work and
automatons.
Automatons making the money, right? We need something to be human, and I think that's what arts can give us.
When I was reading about what you were going to bring to the journalism school, immediately I thought of the marriage of journalism is one part art and one part hard science and news, and it blends those pieces. So you have to be a good artist, a good storyteller to engage an audience, to basically give them their vegetables to be good citizens.
I could not agree more. It is absolutely that. It is a marriage of information and a marriage of artistic endeavor. Especially now, when journalism is under such attack around the globe by those factions in our world that don't want to hear the truth anymore and don't want to hear criticism about their ideas. And I think that's what makes people crave good journalism, is that they are being inundated on social media and on television and on radio and in print by ideas that are so polarized and so nationalized that it leaves, in their view, it leaves no room for a global look at what we're all doing. We're all about this. We have to use journalism and cinema in a way to create social justice. And I think that's what journalists and filmmakers have in spades, is this desire for social justice.
What do you mean when you say social justice?
I mean being accountable for what we say and do, being accountable for how we affect others, making sure that we as human beings are trying to make the world better, not worse, trying to make the world more inclusive, not exclusive. And I think journalism as a whole is the vehicle, is the fifth estate, if you will, that keeps the moral compass from going too far one side, too far the other side. And I think that there's a faction in this world right now that wants it all one way, and it can't be that. We can't all be that way. That would be like asking us to all be heterosexual. That would be like asking us all to be white. We can't be that. We need to be inclusive. We need to have the whole world working together to further the world so that our kids and our grandkids can have a place to grow up in safely. And I know that I'm now, wow, you're really blowing film into this nether region, but I think it's all connected. And I think that the attack on journalism, the attack on film, is all part and parcel of that kind of forthright erosion of how we're supposed to be.
When I went into journalism school, many moons ago now, I'm kind of dating myself, my hair is a lot grayer.
Yeah. You only have a little bit of gray.
Yeah. The big question at the time was, how do we deal with the internet? Facebook had just started. Mm-hmm. Like when I went into the newsroom and I was starting as a cub reporter, just an intern, and they said, we need to find so-and-so's name, they're a murder victim, we need to find their friends and relatives, and we need to get quotes quick. And I went in and I Facebooked, and nothing was locked down then. Everything was the Wild West and open.
Right.
And in less than 5 minutes, I pulled up all this personal information, and I just gave it to one of the other seasoned editors, and he goes, how did you get this? I'm like, Facebook, man. And now, what's the big question? Back then we were saying, how do we confront the internet? What's your big question now that the journalism school has to tackle?
Well, I think for young students, I think it's using social media the same way we would use media 25 years ago, and that is using it responsibly, taking the information, dissecting the information, and presenting the information in a balanced manner. We can't be too far right. We can't be too far left. We need to, there needs to be a yin and a yang. We have to have one side speak and the other side speak. And I think what social media has become is a lightning rod for one side or the other. There just doesn't seem to be anything in the middle. And I think as an instructor at the journalism school, I really want to focus my energies on creating young journalists who are balanced, who understand that you can't just go to one source and create a story. You need to have two sources at the very least to create a story that has any sense of balance and any sense of being good journalism.
One of the things I remember they did was they rolled a TV in on one of those black carts, and they said, okay, you have 30 seconds. Memorize every detail about what you see. And they hit play, and it was just a black and white fuzz on the screen. So then it's like memorizing the dials on the TV and the color of the faux wood paneling. And then 30 seconds stops, and the professor looks at us and he goes, I want you to be that focused on every single person you ever interview in your entire life. And he said, if you do less, you're dishonoring the story.
And that's a hard lesson to learn. And you know, that's so true. When you are a journalist, you have to listen. You have to. If you don't listen, you don't have follow-up questions. And if you don't have follow-up questions, you're doing a disservice to whoever you're interviewing.
Can we as consumers adopt that too and become better listeners?
Absolutely.
I don't know how to advocate better for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wish I did too. I mean, when I surf the internet now, I mean, even when I'm looking up film-related stories, and believe me, I've tried to look on the other side. I've tried to see what someone who is negative towards the film industry and the monies that are spent as incentives towards the film industry. I've tried to look at it from a banker's perspective. And I still come up thinking it's still so good for this province and the people that live in this province. So I have tried to look at both sides on that, and I think I have. And so that's why I come out with my balanced opinion of film. As an instructor at the journalism school, yeah, I mean, that's the very first thing that we teach. And one of my colleagues, Trevor Grant, teaches at the U of R journalism school. And Trevor and I, we've been friends and colleagues and worked together for over 30 years. And I think that is the biggest thing that he and I both try and do. I'm responsible more for the technical side and the visualization side of the journalism. He's absolutely responsible for creating journalists who have critical thinking. And that's really important for him to make sure that these young journalists are listening, are present, are not so much worried about getting what someone else thinks they should get, but getting what they believe to be as a balanced story. And so absolutely, you cannot be a journalist and not be a good listener.
Now that's a little bit of kumbaya. I'm going to throw a hard one at you now.
Yep.
You know, I got together with my graduating class about 6 months ago. We met at a local restaurant downtown Regina, and we looked around the entire room and we said, who's still working in media? And exactly one person raised their hand. And of the people who couldn't make it that day, there was maybe 4 or 5, none of them were still working as journalists. It's a very hard time. It's a very hard industry to be present in. One of the newsrooms I worked in no longer exists. How do you sell journalism as a career, as a vocation to students now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is, it's difficult. I think worldwide, journalism is not only under attack by those who believe that the truth should not be out there, but I think economically, lots of the big corporations and companies that own and run newspapers and television stations and radio stations are perhaps to be somewhat at fault for creating that situation. And why? Well, perhaps because they don't want the truth out there either. That's my opinion. But I think what I can bolster young journalism students with is this, that and I'm gonna try and sell the U of R Journalism School, the School of Journalism here a little bit, and that is that we place over 80% of our graduates in some form of media upon graduation. So that's pretty good. I don't know if you could compare those numbers with any other faculty, and I'm not even going to try to because I'll get in trouble. Because I've only been a journalism instructor at the J School now since July 2018. But I think there is work out there. Is there as much as there was 10 years ago? Probably not, because the economic realities are such that there aren't. Newspapers are shutting down, magazines are shutting down, small to medium market television and radio stations are closing or changing focus so that journalism and news isn't a part of it any longer. But I want to make sure that if anyone's listening to this and they're 18 years old and is thinking, I've always wanted to be a journalist. Well, you know what? Do it. Why not? Give it a whirl. And again, I don't want to sell the U of R as the only journalism school, but it's the only one I work at. 80% odds, those are pretty good odds of getting work. And it's in between 80 and 90, so it's not closer to 70. It's that high. So yeah, there are jobs there. Are you going to stay in that same job for your entire career? Probably not. I know I've reinvented myself 3 times now, but I have Brad Wall to thank for that.
Somebody once said to me, journalism is a valley of broken dreams. You go in idealistic and then you come out dented and bruised and maybe a little tarnished.
Yeah. You know what I think, if anything, I like that. I like the way you said that. But I think those dented and broken dreams are not so much broken, but they are educated. You realize what it takes to make a decision in a legislative assembly. You realize what a politician has to do and say to get reelected. You become aware of the social aspects of your city or your province or your country. I know that one of the biggest eye-opening experiences I had when I was a journalist, as a news photographer, and I still considered myself a journalist because I told stories with a camera. And that was a ride-along I did with the city police back in the 80s, and we went through North Central, and I would follow the police and a social worker into various homes of people, of some people, not all people for sure, but some people living in North Central. And it was my very first, sort of white, heterosexual, privileged male viewpoint walking into a situation in a home that was economically challenged, and it blew me away. I was not the same person when I came home that night, because I realized that I have been living a privileged life, and I never thought I was, because I didn't come from a rich family, but I came from a privileged white family. So it was a huge learning curve for me.
What are police? What were journalists? What did you confront?
Absolute poverty, racial discrimination, child welfare issues, and not because the parents weren't caring, loving people, but because they just had no advantages, none, zero. And because of the color of their skin or their last name or their social standing or where they lived in the city, they were absolutely marginalized. And it didn't dawn on me until I saw that happens every single day of the year, every month of this year. These people who are being marginalized have no voice. And I think perhaps that's what plays into what I said earlier about social justice, is they need a voice. And maybe we're that voice. Sometimes we can be that voice. And we need to be that voice if we can, which again plays into what I said earlier about creating a global community and a global family. We have to start looking out after each other and everyone. It can't just be about one group or another group. And I think that journalists, media people, filmmakers, artists, craftspeople, they do that. They have that mindset. And I think that's what makes what we do so important.
When I come back to thinking about my career, some of my proudest stories, the moments that I might hold up as shining examples of achievement as a journalist, they're not happy stories. They're murder, suffering, poverty. Why does that affect us? Why do we hold those up?
Well, I think
Cookie Lady. You know?
Well, I think because those are the stories that touch us. The Riders winning a Grey Cup in 1989 was exciting, but at the end of the day, it was just a trophy. It was just a game. When you are a journalist or you are a filmmaker or an artist, and you're confronted by the real world and all of its ugliness, that has to touch you. That has to mark your soul in some way that you want to change it. I truly do believe as much negative, can I swear on this podcast?
Yep.
As much negative shit as is going on in this world right now, I truly believe that most people are good inside. I believe people see past the bullshit politics and all of the hatred and just terrible feelings that one side has for the other side. It's in us to be good people. We have to think to be mean and nasty. We don't really have to think to be kind and generous. We just need to act. We just need to do that. And it's funny, I was talking to my wife just this morning and I said, as we're getting older, Christmas, the holiday season, that whole present giving, going to the mall and all of that gets less and less and less for me. And so I said to her, we got to find something that we can do for others on Boxing Day or Christmas Day or, and it's not because I'm trying to make myself feel good about myself. It's just, it's just in me. I just want to go and help somebody out who's disadvantaged, who didn't have the white privilege, the white male privilege that I had. And that's becoming more and more important to me.
Do you need another ivory back scratcher?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't, right? I do not.
One thing we did was we agreed amongst all the adults, we won't do presents, but we'll adopt a family.
Wonderful.
So the women went out and they picked up presents and diapers and formula, and the guys went out and picked up other gifts on the list, and then we came back together, we wrapped it all as a family, and then it was delivered to the family that we had adopted.
Imagine if we could do that, but 10,000-fold in the city of Regina. Wow, what an impact that would make.
Who needs another piece of broken plastic toy?
Absolutely, yeah. I don't need another tie. I don't need another pair of socks.
I was thinking back to how much a pack of diapers costs. That's a tank of gas. That cost adds up with a brand new baby. If we could just help someone who's needs it, who's just is no longer at the point where they're saying, I'm not even going to worry what other people think about me. I so desperately need diapers and formula, I'm going to ask someone else for help. It's like, take them.
Yeah.
Take the diapers, take the formula.
Yeah, and I think that's what gets lost a lot in what, especially in this world, we're so busy buying new iPhones and getting the latest internet toy and trying to, as my dad used to say, keep up with the Joneses. And I got caught up in that too. I'll be perfectly honest. But I think if we can affect change, then we need to affect change. I don't say should, could, would. I say need to, because we are human and we have a soul. And No one wants to see someone walk past a home and not have a home. No one wants to see someone walk past a restaurant and not be able to eat. That's what makes humans, that's what gives humans humanity, is caring about other people. And I know there are lots of people here who are probably listening to this and thinking, fuck, who is this guy? What is he talking about? What a hoity-toity piece of shit. But I think that it's because of what I've done as a professional filmmaker and a documentarian over the last 35, 36 years that has given me that perspective. And it's become that important to me that that's how I want to live the rest of my life. I made a film about my father. My parents were Jack and Lou Burton, John Miller and Ludvina Filipina to be exact, but Jack and Lou to the world. They were married on September 25th, 1952, and they were the best of friends. I always felt that my parents' marriage was somehow different, just not quite like the relationships that surrounded us on the 12 block of Gray Street in the neighborhood called Rosemont. I never talked about my dad as being who he was. And I think after I made that film, I was able to sort of be free to tell people in my social circle and my friends that, yeah, that was my dad. This is who he was. Did he have a great life? No, he didn't have a great life, but he was a great dad. So in the trade-off, I tried to make that film a way for me to say, even though he's gone, a way for me to say, hey, Dad, you did good. You gave back.
It was, to me, it felt very sad. It had like this aching sadness to it.
And there was that, and a lot of people took that away. And it's, you know, I laugh now because I've probably watched it 1,000 times, but I cry every single time that I watch it. Why? Because it is inherently sad, but there's underneath it, there is an air of hope that perhaps someone will see it and it'll change someone's life for the better. And I was on CBC Radio talking about it with Sheila Coles,
A former professor of mine.
There you go, and a wonderful human being and such a smart person. And she interviewed me about the film, and we talked a lot about it. And yes, I bawled my eyes out again. But at the end of the interview, my phone was, as my kids would say, was blowing up, because I had this CBC article linked to my phone, and there were people emailing me and texting me and calling me about, this was my dad, this was my sister, this was my mom, this was my brother. Thank you for making that film. But it wasn't about me making the film. It was about me telling my dad's story. It was really about my dad. And what I wanted people to take away from it was that it's okay to be that guy. It's okay to be Jack in the film. Just do with your life what you want to do with it. And try not to let those negative forces outside your life affect that life. Having said that, as someone who is a privileged person like myself, if you see that kind of injustice happening again, affect change with that. Because you have the power. You are either a white male or a white female, and you may be economically unchallenged. Make change with it. Use it to make a better world.
It feels like the reason your phone blew up, maybe you resonated with them with the story, you gave them a voice and connected them to the broader community. Was that accurate?
Oh, I think absolutely that, and I think that's why people did get were firstly touched by the film and then did get a hold of me, because they wanted everyone else to know too.
Is it the work you're most proud of?
Absolutely. Yep.
Lifetime achievement, you'd say this was it.
This is it. Yeah. And it keeps resonating. I made the film back in 2016. And a week doesn't go by that I don't get an email or a text from someone somewhere in the world. It's on Vimeo now, so I continue to get people sending me messages saying, this was my dad too. Like, how did you deal with it? And I talk about how I dealt with it, not how they should or could or would, but this is how I affected my change when I realized who my dad was. And, you know, if anyone's listening to this and they don't know, the film Separate Beds is about my dad telling me on his deathbed that he was a gay man and that he never was able to live life as a gay person simply because he was born too early in our political sphere of hatred. But
I can include links in the show notes, and then people can follow through if they're
excellent. Please do. And not just because I'm, you know, rah Layton's movie. It's less than 7 minutes long, but if it touches you and helps you to affect change in that way, with gender and sexuality, my God, do it. Do it.
We kind of got a little heavy there. Let's back it up.
Sorry, yeah. I didn't cry, though.
I'm working on it. I'm going to tell you the beer's all gone.
It's so good.
I just finished my last
sip. Dave.
Yeah. Thumbs up to Dave for this beer. It's really making this podcast easier.
It is. It does, yeah.
When you look back on it all.
On my career, you mean?
All of it.
Yeah.
Everything we've been discussing.
Yeah.
What's your favorite story to share with your friends? I'm sure you've got a million from film and maybe a few from journalism.
Wow. God, Matt, there's so many. There are so many. You know, I guess my favorite moment in film would have to have been when I was working on Charlize Theron's film, Sleepwalking. That's what the show ended up being called. And I was working on set. I was on set with Charlize Theron and Dennis Hopper. I mean, two icons in international film, because Charlize is not an American. And the director was trying to impart how I was doing Steadicam for this scene. And the director was trying to impart what he envisioned for this scene. And it just wasn't coming together. And Dennis said, look, hey, I have an idea. I want to just work out this scene with the Steadicam operator. And he looked at me and he said, hey, what's your name? And I said, Layton. He goes, I want to work this scene out with Layton. And right away I thought, Dennis Hopper just said my name. And God, I hope people who are listening to this know who Dennis Hopper is, because I'll be really disappointed if you don't. He's gone.
If they don't, they can just turn off the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Get out of my life.
Yeah. You shouldn't be listening to this if you don't know who Dennis Hopper is. Anyway, he shooed everyone off set, and then it was just me and Dennis Hopper working this scene out, where I was chasing him down a hallway because he was supposedly chasing a family member to kill them. And we worked on the scene for almost 40 minutes, just me and Dennis. And at the end of it, he looked at me and he said, Layton, I think we've got a scene here. And I said, I think we really do. And he said, great, I'll call everybody back in. And then we shot the scene, and it worked out beautifully. The sad part is, I don't think the director liked it, so he cut it from the movie. It's not even in the movie now.
That son of a bitch.
And I think he did it because Dennis created that scene. But that was, for me, the penultimate moment in my film career, because I was alone in a house working on a movie with Dennis Hopper.
I assume you're leaving the ultimate for your documentary, Dennis.
Yes.
Penultimate.
There you go. Absolutely.
I'm a word nerd.
Yeah. You know what? Thank you, Matt.
Can you tell I worked in print?
Yes. And I'm glad you did, because you just made me smarter.
Well, I actually had a different reporter lecture me on that.
Oh.
Can I tell you an embarrassing
Yeah, absolutely,
story?
yes.
My most embarrassing story was I went to cover a First Nations issue. This is my own white privilege showing. I mixed up the man's First Nation and last name, of which there are both a First Nation and a last name difference. So it didn't matter that I had told his story, gotten his quotes accurate. Everything else, it was a fine story, but I had mixed up First Nation, and his last name. And it was like a TPS report from the office. Yeah. I had senior reporters like coming up to me like, what's wrong with you? How did you get that wrong? I had young staffers coming up to me and like, how did you screw that up? I'm like, I didn't realize there was a difference. He wasn't very clear when I asked him for his name and his title and all this stuff. And it just had never occurred to me because I hadn't been exposed to the culture and the people and the way that maybe 5 more years of experience or maybe just a gentle sit down would have said, we're going to teach you something you need to know before you stick your foot in your mouth. And I still regret that. I still feel gross in my stomach that I made that stupid mistake. And it's been over a decade.
But you learned from it.
Oh.
Yeah.
I will never make that mistake again.
Well, I'll tell you, my dad pounded this into us kids as we grew up, and that was, show me a person who makes nothing but excuses, and I'll show you a person who will never learn from their mistakes. He said, if you make a mistake, own it, learn from it, and move on. And that has been my MO since I can remember. So you did the right thing. You made a mistake. We all make mistakes. But you learn from it, and you never made that mistake again. So
I got taken to the mat for it.
Yeah, well, but that's part of owning it, right? That's part of owning it.
It was tough. It's a bitter pill to swallow when you have to go.
We hate to be foulable. We do.
Walk up to the editor and say, I'm sorry, we have to print a correction.
Yeah.
And then they look at you and they're just like, Jesus Christ.
When I was working for CBC News, I was really nervous. It was one of my first days at CBC, having moved over from CTV. And I went to the ledge with a reporter named Art Jones. We're going to the ledge, and in those days we were shooting with tape. And when we got to the ledge, I took the camera out of the case and I walked into the ledge and up to the elevator and in the elevator and up to the second floor and out of the second floor over to some minister's office. And the minister came out and we shot the interview. And then I walked back to the truck and put everything back and drove back to the station and handed the tape to Art Jones, and he took it into the edit suite. And half an hour later, I happened to be walking by the edit suite, and Art Jones said, "Hey, Layton, you want to come in here and see your work? It's beautiful, well done." And I was like, "Oh, hey, great." So I walked into the edit suite, and I was thinking to myself, "Wow, am I ever great?" And he goes, "Watch this." And he hit play. And what you saw was black, and then a camera coming out of a camera case, and then walking into the ledge, and then an elevator, and then out of the elevator, walking down the hallway. And then the camera going on top of the tripod.
I know exactly how this is going to end.
And then a minister comes out the door, and then the camera's coming off of the tripod, walking down the hallway. I had rolled the camera in reverse. Let me tell you, I felt about an inch tall. But to his credit, Art Jones just laughed it off and said, "It happens to all of us, kid." And I never forgot that. So we make mistakes.
It's always at the worst time.
It is, of course.
Technology snafus.
Yeah.
I was working on one with a minister, and I had the camera set up and the lights and everything. It had taken like 20 minutes, and these are people whose time you don't want to waste.
No.
And then I go back and I finished everything. I'm like, great, this is going to be perfect. The minister's up in the air on a plane. He's leaving the country. And I click play, and the audio is fine, but it's the audio from the shotgun mic on the camera. And then you hear click as I push in the microphone connected to his lapel. The audio dies. The batteries had crapped out.
Oh.
Or there was a kink in the cord or something. So there's just him talking with no audio. And I was just...
Matt, I want you to come to school, to the J School at the U of R next semester for the first day of the undergrads radio documentary days. And I want you to tell that story because it will help me greatly. Help me greatly. Yeah.
Oh, it's just, that's probably the second most frustrating technological snafu I've ever had.
But they happen. I tell my students all the time, technology will fail you. So, know that, get over it. Plan for the worst.
Truly. Or storing battery packs inside your coat just to stay warm when it's like minus 40 because you've got to shoot outside. Or I'll look live from outside. It's like, you jerks, can I just film indoors?
Yeah, exactly.
Or, okay, well, last one, and then we'll move on. But it was like one of my first days at CTV. I'm working as a cameraman and then shooting and freelancing on the side, like I was doing reporting on the Saturday, Sunday. And I have the camera, and it's on the anchor, and I bump it with my hand, and right in the ear, the director goes, "Congratulations, 100,000 people just saw you screw up your camera shot." So,
That's always a little disconcerting.
So where do we go from here? What's the future for journalism and film?
Well, I think it's a different answer for each. For journalism, we plow ahead. We do our due diligence as professors and instructors at the J School at the U of R, and we continue to do what we've always done at that school, and that is produce great journalists. And I think if anyone wants to take the time to look at the cast of journalists that have come out of that school, they will be blown away by the amount of talent, yourself included.
Well, thank you.
That have come out of that school and gone on to some type of media communications career. We need journalists, and a lot of people say with this era of fake news, the only fake news is the news that people don't want to tell the truth in. That's fake news. There's no fake news when you're telling the truth and telling a balanced story, and that's what we teach at the J School at the U of R. And we have wonderful instructors and professors that commit themselves to that. So the future for journalism, I think, is very important, and I think that it will continue, because I think people are much more attuned to good journalism now, say, than they were even 5 years ago. So I think people in general find good journalism to be something that they desire and want more and more of. And I think that appetite for truth and balance is only going to increase. And so we need to feed that. We need to feed that as professors and instructors, not just at the J School at Regina, but in every journalism school program in the world.
Just last week, I was reading a news article that was saying, in spite of all this fake news, and I vomit in my mouth when I have to say the word fake news. In spite of it, public perception and public trust in Canada is nearing an all-time high for journalism, for reporters. So in spite of the screamers on Facebook and on social media, there is a thirst and a demand for good news. It's just, how do we figure out how to get paid to do it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you can take American politics, for example, Trump's the president of the U.S., and is that tragic? I mean, I think it is for truth and justice and any kind of social justice.
The man eats steak with ketchup. That's pretty much all.
Oh my God! I mean, why eat? But I think with the last round of elections in the U.S., where the House, they've not had that kind of voter turnout in the U.S. in years, and that was because people started listening to what was being said by the fake newsers and realized, oh my God, that's not the truth. I want the truth. I want my politicians telling me what is the truth. I want my country to be honorable. And that's why they showed up in droves, is to re-elect a House that was more reflective of the truth and of balance. You don't have to agree with each other all the time. But again, I hearken back to, you have to have a certain sense of humanity for everyone, no matter who they are. So I think that is an indication that people are listening and people are discerning what real truth is and what real balance is. So
one of the things I will never forget from the journalism school is I got to meet Seymour Hersh. And he was the author he was the journalist who basically reported the My Lai massacre. He broke that story. And if you're a journalist, he's kind of a journalist. You know who he is. He's famous. Woodward and Bernstein get all the accolades in the sunlight, but Seymour is down in the trenches. And man, what a guy! Like, he looked at what we were saying. He asked me a question, and I gave him an answer, and he's like, "That's a stupid answer." I'm like, I love it.
Yeah.
Tell me I'm dumb some more, Seymour.
Yeah, I'm learning from it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just imagine what he had to do to get that story.
He told the story of how he got it, how he tracked down Callie in the barracks, how his previous life as a service in the military had helped him get what he needed to get those quotes, get the sources, and how he did it ethically. And he's like, well, he kind of posed an ethical question to us, and he's like, who would do this and who would do that? And he goes, it was a loaded question. He's like, you all fail.
Nice try.
Yeah. He's like, here's what happened and here's how I did it. And,
Yeah.
and it kind of dawned on me, oh man, ethics really matter. And this is Seymour
Ethics always matter.
giving us crap.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, the idea that you were asking me earlier, about journalism, about film, and you know, I gave you my opinion on journalism, but I think because I am a filmmaker too, I straddle two worlds. I straddle the world of journalism and I straddle the world of narrative film and documentary film. I think what we need to bring film back to Saskatchewan is obvious. It's a tax credit, because that benefits not just narrative filmmakers, but it benefits documentarians. It benefits the province itself economically. But I think more importantly than anything is it brings people in this province back to stories about Saskatchewan. And I think as a filmmaker, that's what we are all about. We're storytellers. We're ideas. Ideas and stories are renewable. Ideas and stories are generational. Ideas and stories never stop happening. And I think that we need to bring this tax credit back, not just so much as an industry builder, but as an investment into Saskatchewan people and Saskatchewan filmmakers and the youth of Saskatchewan. You know, as I said earlier, I'm 57 now. The likelihood of me going back on a film set is highly unlikely. But as someone who's been there and done that, I am committed to the young people in this province, the young filmmakers in this province, to being there for them as long as I can be there. As long as I can stand on two legs, I'll come and help you on set. I'll show you, I'll teach you the language of film. I'll impart my knowledge of framing and lighting and composition. I want to make your film exactly the film you want to make, and I can help with that. And because I've been so involved in the politics of film over the last 7 or 8 years, I think too that I can navigate my way through the murky waters of politics. You know, whoever's in charge, but right now it's with the Saskatchewan Party. I read something on Facebook on Sunday. A friend of mine from Vancouver, I call them friends in exile, said, "Layton, bring me home. I'm so tired. Bring me home." That's what I'm going to try and do.
Back to Saskatchewan.
Back to Saskatchewan. Yep.
Layton, I want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate the exposure and the beer. Thank you. It's a great combination.
I'm trying to do something really awesome with the podcast.
Yeah, it's great. You know, and I've listened to some of them, and I think that, I mean, even podcasts, I shouldn't say even, but podcasts like this too, they're ideas. And I think that ideas form relationships, and ideas create change. And I think that a podcast like this can do that. And so I thank you, Matt, for putting the time and effort into this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rebels, thanks for tuning in this week. If you want to find the latest news about Rebellion Brewing, be sure to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Untapped. I'm going to be including a butt ton of links in the show notes because we talked about so much. I want you to be able to have that context. I want you to be able to follow up with what we're talking about. That's including the My Lai massacre story from Seymour Hersh, and I'm also going to be including the Vimeo link to Layton's documentary. Thank you.
Separate beds.
Thank you for joining the Rebellion.